working, really? Let's just see if it's recording here. Bang, 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 bang. Yeah, great. Let's see if this works. This is very much a test video. I've got the cards right here. One from the hello. That's the Jodorowsky version of the Marseille deck. Have a quick look. And then this is the Piatnik on which it is based. See how it's more of a woodcut. It's less glossy. It's rough. Nothing is very smooth in the tarot. Rock and roll. Excellent. Fantastic. I'm probably just going to read a section because I tried to do this before and it cut out and I got a sore throat and I read for no reason to no one. I'm going to start from this book, The Way of the Tarot, Alejandro Jodorowsky. Fantastic book. What else? Yeah, expect some mistakes. Expect me to sound like a teenage boy when my voice breaks. Anyway, I'll just read a little section, see how this goes, because I'd like to keep doing this. Hey, someone's joined. Wow, this is exciting. Great. All the way from Greece. Hello, Eleni. Anyway, I'm probably going to turn off this screen so I can focus and have little pauses and breaks. Okay, so don't forget to go onto Google Images. I've left the link in the page. There's 3 people joined. God, I'm excited. No, I'm really turning off the screen now. All right, so for anyone who's missed it, I'm reading from here. Excellent. The Way of the Tarot by Alejandro Jodorowsky. And it's based on, of course, the Nameless Arcanum. This is the Jodorowsky Marseille version, nice and glossy. And this is the Piatnik, the Viennese version. I'm going to have little pauses just to make sure everything's running. I'm trying to record this on a digital audio workstation while recording to you. And this is my second attempt to do this, so let's hope this goes well. Okay, let's go. Your comments and your suggestions for how to make this better are also really appreciated. Number 13, the Nameless Arcanum. Profound transformation, revolution. The most widespread error concerning this arcanum is the one made by the superficial tradition that has given it the meaning, and sometimes the name of death, in inverted commas. The weight of this inaccuracy has weighed heavily upon the interpretation of Arcanum 13. Of course, the central figure we see here is the scythe-wielding skeleton that represents death in popular tradition. However, there are numerous elements that allow us to move away from this simplistic interpretation. On one hand, Arcanum 13 does not have a name. After the emptying and deepening work achieved by the Hanged Man, this card invites a radical purification of the past, a revolution that takes place in the non-verbal or pre-verbal depths of the individual, in the shadow of that black terrain, that unknown region of ourselves from which emerges like a matrix our humanity. On the other hand, we can note that 13 is not the last number of the major Arcana series, but is located slightly past the middle. If this card represents an ending, it would probably have the number 22. Its position at the heart of the tarot prompts us to see it as a work of cleansing, a revolution necessary for the renewal and the ascent that follows after it, 1 degree at a time, towards the total realization of the world. Furthermore, this numbered but untitled card echoes the Fool, who has a name but no number. The similarity of the postures of I'll start that again. The similarity of the postures of the 2 figures is obvious. The skeleton of Arcanum 13 could be that of the Fool seen on an X-ray. We can deduce from this that these 2 arcana represent 2 aspects of the same fundamental energy. But if the fall is first and foremost an advance, a contribution, a liberation, Arcanum 13 evokes a work similar to ploughing or a harvest, preparing the terrain for a new life. Here again, an obvious clue takes us away from the simplistic interpretation. This skeleton is flesh-coloured, the preeminent colour of organic life. This is the skeleton we carry inside of us, the bone, living essence and structure of all movement, and not the skeleton we leave behind us when we depart this life. Key words: change, mutation, revolution, anger, transformation, cleansing, harvest, skeleton, to cut, advance, to eliminate, to destroy, and rapidity. Okay, I'm just going to do a wee check and see if it's recording. Everything's going fine. Pop screen here. Hooray! People are listening. All right, so just to repeat to anyone who's just logged in, this is the test recording of number 13, the Nameless Arcanum, which is this part of the tarot. And please look on Google Image for this view. The link is in the description, and it's from this wonderful textbook. Again, comments and suggestions are really recommended. I really want to invite any ideas that you may have on how to improve these recordings. But I'm doing my best for now. So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to turn the screen off here. Before I continue, I'd also like to suggest one thing of in the future readings of maybe reading passages and then pausing to maybe give comments on it or interpretations or to answer questions. There you go. All right, let's keep going. A white bone on the ground evokes the dried skeletal structure. The origin of the word skeleton is a Greek word that means dried. But even this bone is moving towards new life. Because it is pierced with 7 holes, it appears like a flute, an instrument that waits only for a breath to produce its music. This breath could well be divine. Therefore, it is unthinkable to reduce Arcanum 13 to the meaning of death. But we can see a major transformation, a revolution, or a radical change in this card. The figure, with his vital red and spiritual blue scythe, is in the process of working his nature, his deep nature. He is holding the scythe by a yellow handle, the colour of intelligence. The labour has been carried through the wish and thought stage and is now achieved. Aggressiveness or anger, either suffered or expressed, is often visible in the process of Arcanum 13. But it is possible that this work takes place like an outburst of energy, a quick and liberating explosion. It is a process of elimination that works the ego like a field and tames it. No useless element is tolerated anymore. The reductive concepts and value systems imprisoning us are swept away, and with them the complicity that held us to this point within our unrealized state or neurosis. All bonds of dependency are cut to permit us to recover our lost liberty, the very freedom of which the fall is the primordial symbol. The black ground on which Arcanum 13 is working is reminiscent of the negredo of alchemy, or the mire from which the lotus emerges in Buddhist tradition. I'm going to pause here because this is actually a very wonderful point in the processes of inner alchemy. Is the first stage of the alchemical process. And I mentioned inner alchemy to discuss the spiritual aspects of alchemy. Alchemy was never simply a chasing the philosopher's stone or pursuing gold as a substance. It was an inner attainment of spiritual growth, pulling heaven down onto earth. And that's true with the alchemists of medieval Europe, as well as the alchemists in Taoist China, or China of antiquity. So negredo is the primary substance, the shit, the dirt, the oil and muck that was used to then be eventually distilled and transformed into gold. There were many goals of alchemists, and our production of alcohol in medieval Europe had many similarities of distillation, purification, refinement, and alchemy can be really wonderfully considered as cooking. Cooking in the sense of getting the prime materials of life, of your experience and your impressions of the world, cooking, and speeding up these processes, so making the natural processes quicker. So I'm very attracted to the Nameless Arcanum because it represents the necessary death for life to advance, to continue, or to grow. I could talk all day about cell death and skin death and exfoliation. Let's leave that for a bit later. I'm going to do another little check just to see we're still live, and then I'm still going on the DAW. Good. Question is, where did I leave? Okay, I'm going to reread that little section about negredo. Negredo being that primary substance of alchemy, the burgeoning, the swinging part of alchemy, using shit, using dirt, using the blackness as a way of finding light. The black ground on which Arcanum 13 is working is reminiscent of the negredo of alchemy, or the maya from which the lotus emerges in Buddhist tradition. It is the colour of the unconscious, emptiness, deep mystery. On it we see two heads. We do not know if they've been cut off or if they are emerging from the dark soil. In any case, the skeleton is supporting itself on them in order to keep moving forward. Father and mother have been dethroned at an earlier time, so that the profound nobility of the male and female appear in the form of two purified archetypes. Two human beings of royal tradition are therefore being born here, just as two different forms of grass are sprouting, one that is deep blue, the colour of intuitive spiritual reception, and the other yellow, the colour of active and solar intelligence. We can also see unattached feet and hands on the black ground, some of which are well formed and others imperfect. Have they been cut off? Are they sprouting? In this latter case, we could say that the new being is rising to the surface. If we study the skeletal figure more closely, we can see more than one face. There is the shadow of a profile, as if the darkness of the ground has risen as high as the head and as the mind was emptied. The eye of the skeleton looks like a dragon biting its tail, symbol of the infinite nature of the universe, the Ouroboros, of course. The skeleton's head bears a lunar shape, sign of its receptivity. And on the back of its head, if we turn the card sideways, we can see among the hatch marks the Hebrew letters Yod-He Vav-He, which spell out the divine name. The sum of these four letters in the Hebrew alphabet equals 26, the figure of divinity, of which 13 is exactly half. A little side note, what attracts me above the other versions of the tarot is the Marseille deck's focus on numbers and numerology. It appears to me that the tarot in the beginning, I'm going to say the beginning as in Marseille, one of its beginnings, the tarot was always a game, and it very much linked in with people's, you could say, superstitious approaches to numbers. This also has a relation to Kabbalah, a very mathematical or mathematically obsessed tradition, almost with this geometrical aspect. And I'm going to have to read it again. Yod-He Vav-He, the four letters of God's name, relates to what we now say Yahweh, the Old Testament word for God, Yahweh. One of the names for spirit is pneuma. Pneuma and from that we get wind. Pneumonia, for example, or pneumatic. And Yod-He, Vav-He, unless I'm mistaken here, I think it's supposed to be a windy kind of word. In written Hebrew, there are no vowels. Nama, if you're listening, you can correct us on this. And there's a strong attraction to me of the idea of, I'm going to say God, want of a better word, but God or spirit as wind. It's a famous line from the book of John. I hope I get this right. It's a fantastic line. The spirit, we do not know where the spirit comes from, where pneuma, where wind comes from, and we do not know where it goes. Thus it is with people who are born of the Spirit. We do not know where it comes from, we do not know where it goes, but we are the wind. And and it is in this way that the people who are born of the Spirit progress. Terrible citation there. Please continue, Pascal. All right. So I'm continuing. This figure carries divinity within, but it is not entirely divine. It is working in the plane of incarnation. The pelvis of the skeleton and its spinal column borrow the colours of its scythe, azure and red, as if these two colours, vital action and spiritual receptivity, form the base of the growth along the column, like a blade of wheat, up to the red four-petal flower supporting the head. Hidden in the figure's pelvis, a blue heart tells us it works with love. I'm just going to change the pop screen here. I think it's getting a little bit poppy. How about that? Less popcorn for the pop screen. Okay, I'll just repeat. Hidden in the figure's pelvis, a blue heart tells us it works with love. One of its knees and one of its elbows bear a flower with 3 petals or a red clover, which again designates activity at strategic points in the body. The knee and the elbow are the site of charisma, of communication with the crowd. One leg and arm of the flesh-coloured part of its body are a saturated light blue colour. This is an active and communicative being that is both incarnated and spiritual, human and divine, mortal and immortal. Its mask is terrifying. Even if we have seen that the skeleton conceals divine activity, we can still allow ourselves to be frightened by its appearance and see this figure as an empty-headed, lame individual, randomly scything with no respect for life or beauty. It appears as a terrifying threat that cannot be appealed, like an unjust and merciless death. But its action points the way to the path of transformation and carries us from mortality to the immortality of individual consciousness. In a reading, this card requires great delicacy of interpretation. Negative predictions are toxic and useless. It is not necessary to read death, mutilation, or illness in this card. Some reading subjects become terrified from simply seeing this card in a spread. What's called for here is to discover then what transformation it evokes, what changes are desired or are already at work, perhaps what threats it may permit them to avoid. It can sometimes involve a mourning to be performed, also sometimes great internalized anger that needs to be expressed. Then again, Arcanum 13 sometimes evokes an unconscious aggressiveness or the need to manifest an energy that the consultant does not know how to express positively. It is good in this case to see if the energy of the Fool, same direction, same movement, but less negative connotations, would not be more appropriate. I should mention here, he means the direction of the direction to which the card is facing. So if you look at the Fool will be facing the same way. Many relations in the posture, the stature, or the pose of the Fool and the Nameless Arcanum, the figure of death. O Negredo. Okay. However, when a revolution is what's called for, Arcanum 13 brings it with radical rapidity, which can inspire a great relief. So this is the section which, prior to reading this today, I thought, wait, this is way too long. This is Jodorowsky going off on a big purple prose tangent. I thought it was quite indulgent of Jodorowsky. But reading it aloud transforms the word. The word made flesh. But as we're such a visual culture, addicted to seeing the word, it's quite something to hear yourself speak something aloud. And having read this aloud now, once, the whole way through, without actually getting the technology right, so speaking to no one, it occurred to me that this isn't excessive. It needs length. It needs time. There's a reason this is quite long, this next bit. And this next bit is called, "And if Arcanum 13 spoke." So it begins the quotation of Death speaking. "If you push yourself to go faster, you will catch me. If you slow down, I shall catch you. If you walk peacefully, I shall accompany you. If you start to turn around, I shall dance with you. Since our meeting is inevitable, face me at once. I am your inner shadow, the one laughing behind the illusion you call reality. Patient as a spider, set like a jewel in each of your moments, I am the one with whom you share your life. Or if you refuse this, you will not be living in the truth. You can flee to the other side of the world, I shall always be by your side. Since the time you were born, I am the mother that never stops bringing you into the world. I am the mother that never stops bringing you into the world. So, rejoice. It is only when you grasp me that life becomes meaningful. The demented, who do not recognize me, cling to things without seeing I own them all. There is nothing that does not bear my seal. Permanent impermanence. I am the secret of the sages. They know they can only advance on my path. Those who incorporate me to become powerful minds, those who deny me, seeking vainly to escape, lose the delights of the ephemeral. Although they are in being, they do not know how to be. While trapped in anguish, they do not know how to live. This is a fascinating section coming up about how Jodorowsky brings to life, with death, an aspect of death I had never considered before, which is its relation to children and adults. I think we could agree children don't really understand death. In as much as they get things much more easily than adults, and they're much more rooted in their intuitions, children find the concept of death quite difficult to understand. And I think adults still get this, still have this, but they block it out and they intellectualize it. Something about, especially a close friend's death, a close family member's death, is the profound feeling of unknowing, of confusion. You love someone, they leave a huge impression on your life, and suddenly they're not there. And it just feels profoundly absurd because there's a bodily knowledge, a resonance with someone who was there, and then they've gone. And the body's sort of pining. It's not you intellectually saying to yourself, where is the person gone? And, oh, I missed these certain things. It's simply the body speaking and sort of breathing this sadness, this loss. So here we go. Continuing the Arcanum speaking. Children cannot imagine me. If they did, they would stop being children, for I am the end of childhood. Those who recognize me on their paths become adults. They know that they belong to me. I devour their difficulties, their triumphs, their failures, their loves, their disappointments, their pleasures, their pains, their parents, their children, their pride, their illusions, and their wealth. I devour everything. My voraciousness is boundless. I even devour the gods. But when I reach the last of them, the authentic one, once the masks dissolve in my entrails, I break my teeth on him. in his indescribable mystery, in his absent presence. In his present absence, I kill myself. I only swallow egos. Each has a different taste, each one more bitter and fetid than the last. Thanks to me, everything turns into dust and collapses. But do not think this is a tragedy. I make destruction a process of extreme splendor. I wait for life to display its most supreme beauty. That is when I appear to eliminate it with the same beauty. When it reaches the limits of its growth, I begin to destroy it with the same love that was used to build it. What joy, what immeasurable joy. My permanent destruction opens the way to constant creation. If there is no end, there can be no beginning. I am at the service of eternity, your eternity. If you devote yourself to transformation, you will become the master of the ephemeral moment, because you will live in its infinite intensity. It is because of me that desire is born in the belly, in the genitals. Coitus serves to conquer eternity. It's undoubtedly true that medieval Europe, from which the tarot comes from, medieval Europe was very much more in contact with death. That's an obvious truth. At some point in Portugal, I believe in the 1300s, the plague came, the Black Death came to Portugal every 7 years on average. You can imagine your parents-in-law, your landlord, second cousins, gone from one day to the next. There are churches here in Lisbon built on burial grounds. One of them, the Igreja de São Roque, or the Church of Saint Roch, was built on top of this burial grounds of people who died of the Black Death, which leads the potential explanation for why we have streets called or a street called Poço dos Negros, street of the well of the dark-skinned. It was considered that these dark-skinned people were slaves, but it's also potentially because it was close to a plague burial ground, plague victims, that this church was built. And this church has, I think, the biggest collection of relics, that is, body parts and possessions of saints in the whole of Iberia, Portugal and Spain. But the medieval Catholic tradition, or part of it, was to see bones, to look at bones as a way possibly of concretizing God, or shades or shards of God, as a way of attaining connection with an otherwise mysterious being. It doesn't really need to be said, but most of the population wouldn't be able to read. The priests had all the knowledge, and so these relics, looking at people's bones, bizarre to us, would have provided some comfort. I still find that maybe not distasteful, but difficult to comprehend. But death being so present, maybe you could look at it in the face, and I think they were much more literate about dealing with death. As a Quaker, a lot of Quakers, liberal Quakers, are pushing for assisted dying as part of healthcare, in the sense that end-of-life care is still healthcare, and improving the quality of life at the end of someone's time is a responsibility we should all be all should be doing. Quakers are quite big on preparing for their own deaths, which really reconfigures the way you consider life. It's very life-affirming to stare death in the face, not as a negative thing, but as a neutral force. It's there, it happens, and it's sort of blind in a way. So Jodorowsky talks of death as a supreme beauty containing joy, its own joy. There is, for sure, relief in certain aspects of death. And don't we perform a death every night, really, if we go to sleep? We've shed our conscious selves into this kind of positive, potentially positive void. So here's a list of words sort of sandwiched in the meat of the sandwich of this section is the list of words which he has for each chapter on each major arcanum. And he calls this, among the traditional interpretations, profound transformation, revolution, cut, to eliminate what prevents us moving forward, end of an illusion, salutary rupture, anger, revolutionary, aggressiveness, harvest, work of mourning concerning a person or a situation, hatred, violence, cleansing, radical purification, essence of change, the work of the subconscious, the deity's destructive face, death as God's cosmic mask, transmutation, eradication of the old to make way for the new, work on the human skeleton, essential movement, X-rays, psychoanalyst or person who accompanies the change. To continue the section called "And If the Arcanum Spoke," begin quote, "If you did not have a material body, I would not exist. When you become pure mind, pure spirit, I disappear. Without matter, I no longer exist. So dare to dispose of your flesh and bones in my mouth. To win, you must give me everything you have, which has truly always belonged to me. Your ideas, your feelings, your desires, and your needs all belong to me. If you want to keep something, tiny as it may be, you who are nothing and possess nothing will lose it. You will lose eternity. Understand this. In my extreme darkness, I am the eye of the unthinkable that you might call God. I am also God's will. Thanks to me, you return to God. I am the divine door. He who enters my territory is a sage, and he who cannot consciously cross my threshold is a fearful child caparisoned in his detritus. You must enter me pure. Get rid of everything, even detachment. Annihilate yourself. It is only when you disappear that God appears. You want strength? By accepting me, you are the strongest. You want wisdom? By accepting me, you are the wisest. You want courage? By accepting me, you are the most courageous. Tell me what you want. If you become my lover, I shall give it to you. When you feel me becoming part of your body, I transform the concept that you have of yourself. I make you dead in life and grant you the pure gaze of the dead, two unattachable holes through which only God gazes. The instant then becomes terrible. Everything is transformed into a mirror, and you see yourself in every being, every form, every process. What you call life becomes a dance of illusions. There is no longer any difference between matter and dream. Don't shiver, have no fear, rejoice. Life, although unreal and ephemeral, reveals its greatest beauty in the moment. By giving me your gaze, you will finally understand that it is a miracle to be alive. I do not like it when people recognize me before their time. I want people to call me at the precise moment they grasp who I am. If you rush me by committing suicide, I shall bring no wisdom, as you have made a travesty of me as vulgar destruction. I am not an absurd misfortune. I have a profound meaning. I am the great initiator, the intangible teacher crouched beneath matter. When I am solicited dementedly, you make me angry, and I am made to act against my will. Only those who reach me in full awareness give me supreme bliss, but the majority of beings come to me ignorantly through war, crime, vice, illness, and catastrophes. Rare are those who reach that state of pure consciousness in which I become the apogee of realization. These individuals never cease to recognize me, whereas I come as a surprise to the others. He who resigns himself with understanding to accept being my prey lives with ease in freedom and joy, faces aggression with confidence and without nightmares, and realizes his desires. By losing hope, we also lose fear. Do not offer me your hand, for I shall immediately cause it to rot. Offer me your consciousness. Disappear within me in order to finally become the totality. Marvellous. I feel it's still a little bit poppy on the pop screen here, and I would really like to get this recording as deluxe as possible. And I'm tempted to just do these every single bloody day of the self-quarantine and afterwards, just to enjoy it, to make a bit of a ritual and tradition. I think what's lacking now, with all of us here semi-alone, using this kind of strange, unsatisfying virtual playpen, is we're lacking a bit of ritual. It's really tough to have these machines which give us all of the answers and keep us updated and get us socializing, but also bring so much anxiety. So it's a giver and a taker away, these machines. So maybe I think what's lacking in our lives, especially now, this is an exaggerated moment in our lives, is we're lacking ritual and we're lacking regular things to turn up to. One of the great comforts of radio for me, listening to NTS and WFMU, is, for example, I know on a Friday morning I'm going to be listening to Stan on WFMU, and I know other people will, and I think that really brings us together. It is absolutely amazing what this technology can do in terms of bringing people together. I've only done it a couple of times, but I've had Quaker Meeting via Skype. I've done a bit of meditating with a person who couldn't make it to my house via Zoom. It's really, really powerful. We can get beyond the screen and feel a different kind of connection. Last thing, well, I'm going to say loads of things, but please add your suggestions how I can make the recording better, and add to this maybe now a tradition of doing live readings. I'm quite tempted to have a theme of the link is in the at the top of the video. The link, maybe I'll just leave it again, but it's of the Bataille, Georges Bataille, and Inner Alchemy Reading Circle. And here is the link. Bang, bang, bang. I've done quite a few recordings of excerpts from books. Richard Rorty's Contingency, Irony, Solidarity, which is a fantastic book on American pragmatism, sort of a digestion of French and so-called continental philosophy within the American pragmatist tradition, as inspired by William James. Tremendously encouraging book, and the reading is available via the YouTube link I've just left. I've also read from, do I have it? Here it is. Visions of Excess by Georges Bataille. There's shitty lighting here. There we go. Tremendous collection of essays, I believe, from the late 20s to the late 30s, in the surrealist tradition, but adamantly not the philosophical tradition, even though it looks like it. Georges Bataille was, in my view, a DIY legend, not part of any university circle, did his own thing. He studied ancient coins for a living, and he got a lot of early surrealists together, had a tremendous falling out with André Breton. And they very much admired each other, Breton and Bataille, despite these public spats. What else have I read from? I've read poems by John Donne, and they do all have a central theme of inner alchemy and of the subreal. The subreal is some potentially useless concept that I've come up with, or a label I use to talk about surrealism, but from below. Sur in surreal means above or beyond. So going below the real, into the depths of ourselves, into the, as was mentioned in the chapter, into the negredo, the dark substances of human experience, I feel is another way of appreciating the psychic automatism, or the dream reality of the real part of sur or subreal, if that makes sense. 2 essays I read from this is The Solar Anus, brilliant name for an essay, and the pineal gland, which is a much longer one. So I hope those are enjoyable. Tomorrow, I'm going to try and read from a book called Postmodern Theory. I don't know the author, but a section on Habermas, who was a member of the Frankfurt School, and he tried to bring pragmatic political engagement into postmodern theory, something that's often lacking in this area. A sign of hope for activists and for appreciating mutual truth across diverse speaking publics. I would like to read again from this, but focusing on Negredo, focusing on darkness. And there's a lot from Blaise Pascal, the Enlightenment French thinker, the inventor of the calculator, but also a fantastic theologian, delightfully depressing writer, and I'd like to read from his thoughts, his pensées. That's a bit of a challenge, given that there's bits in Latin that in my translation are left in Latin, and that I'd have to find the translations for. I'm gonna shut up now. Jeez, I've been talking for ages. Let me just have a quick look at your comments. It's really great. Hi from Leeds, Stephen. Obrigado from Maria Nunes. Very good. All right. Thanks, Tiago. It's your help. Thanks to your help that it sounds good, Mr. Mike Stand. All right. That's goodbye from me. Hello to Paolo, who's just joined. Sorry, we're just coming to an end now. I think you can wind back. And I'll see you tomorrow. Let's say 4 p.m. 4 p.m. I might do some later tonight. Anyway, thanks a lot. And go and have a look at the Google image of the beautiful, fantastic, tough, duro card. The Nameless Arcanum number 13. Go and have a look at some of the videos I've left on YouTube. Comment is there. And go and keep well and keep safe and keep clean. And I'll see you tomorrow.